Hello friends, and welcome to Take Two for this Wednesday, the 22nd of April, 2020. I'm Jeannie. I'm so glad you decided to come along for the ride today. Well, it's Wednesday, and that means it's hump day. So I hope what I have to share with you today brings a little lift to your midweek hump, okay? Well, I'm entitling today's Take Two, Unwanted House Guest. This morning when I went to go get in the shower after our walk, I noticed there was a rather large, creepy crawly in the bathtub. He found his way, he sneaked in, and it might be because we just had the house treated on the outside with Terminex, and sometimes what they do is they try to creep in, and a lot of times they're on their way out anyway, but there he was, a big, rather large palmetto bug or cockroach crawling in my bathtub. So the first thing I did was say, Michael, and Michael came running, and this unwanted house guest, shh, that was the end of him. Well, like I said, he was on his way out anyway, but no more unwanted house guest. Started thinking about an unwanted house guest that Michael and I had some years ago. He had an acquaintance, not even a friend, but just an acquaintance, a man who was in a civic club that he was involved with. And this young man had recently gone through a split with his partner. And so he was really found himself with no place to live. So he had heard about an apartment that was available, and he went, and supposedly he had gone and signed a lease for a new apartment in 2 weeks. But in the meanwhile, the poor guy had nowhere to sleep, and he was probably just going to have to sleep in his car. So Michael took pity on this fella and invited him to come and stay in our guest room. Well, he did stay in our guest room, and then we found out that the car that he'd been driving was no longer available to him anymore. So this guy had nowhere to go, and nowhere to sleep, nowhere to go and live, and no car to drive, and his job was 20 miles away. So Michael took pity on him once again and started letting him use his car to drive to work. He worked in a restaurant, and he worked like an evening shift that ended about 8, 9 o'clock. So he figured, okay, well, it won't be too bad. I usually don't need the car late afternoon and early evening most of the time, so he could go ahead and he could borrow it. So he went ahead and did that. But then we started noticing that he was getting home later and later. Sometimes midnight, 1, even 2 in the morning, and we didn't say anything. We've just figured, that he has to have good reason. We kind of trusted the guy. Meanwhile, we did find out from the manager, who was an actual friend of Michael's, that this fellow would finish his shift at 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock, and then he would just go to the bar and start drinking. And then he would drive that 20 miles, a little tooted. He'd drive it home at all hours. Well, we started getting a little bit upset about this, and Michael confronted him, and Michael was finding things like cigarette ashes in his car and stuff like that, and he said, okay, this has got to stop. So he kind of, gently talked to him about it, and, it was getting up to the 2-week mark anyway, and we figured, well, it'll be over and done with. The guy's been through enough heartache. Well, it got past the 2-week mark, and it was getting up to 3 weeks, and finally we said to him, what happened to the apartment that you were going to rent? And he said, well, turns out that it's not quite ready yet. It'll be another week before it's ready. So we're thinking, okay, that means he's going to be with us a month. But, okay, we were cooking his meals and doing things for him, and we were being nice and loaning him the car and all that. Well, finally, around the 4th, maybe going on to 5th week, he didn't come home at all. And we were just petrified. We just had no idea what was going on. We called the restaurant. There was no answer. There was just, where was this guy? Finally, at 7 o'clock in the morning, maybe 7:30 in the morning, he comes strolling into the house. And we said, what happened to you? And he said, oh, we had to work late, and I went over to a friend's house after one of the other fellas who worked at the restaurant I work in, and we just started talking, and I fell asleep on his couch. Well, long story short, we did find out later on that he had gotten rip-roaring drunk, way too drunk to drive, and his co-worker took him home and let him sack on the couch till he sobered up and woke up. So that was it. We had to say, okay, you know what? Shh, time for this unwanted house guest to get out of here. Now, we don't usually throw people out of our house. But this was something that just had to go. We knew that it had gotten to the point where we had to say enough was enough, and we had to kick that bird out of the nest. Now, that's something that's very sad for me. I cried quite a bit because it was us trying to extend hospitality and then us finding out that this man had been taking advantage of us. And guess what else we found out? He never put a down payment on a lease on an apartment ever. He just made that whole story up. So we sent him back to the place he had slept the night before, a co-worker of his, and we don't know whatever happened to him from that point forward. This is what we do know. We got to a point where we finally had to say, sorry, you're no longer a wanted house guest in this house. And I started thinking about all the things in my life that I've allowed to take residency. Sometimes bad attitudes, bad eating habits, just lots of things in my own personal life, some toxic people I've allowed in, maybe some thought patterns I shouldn't have. Those are all unwanted house guests, and sometimes I let them take residency a little too long, and longer they overstay their welcome. So I'm going to encourage you, boys and girls, if there's an unwanted house guest in your life, a bad attitude, a bad eating habit, maybe you're just not as kind as you could be to other people, particularly while we're on this lockdown situation, this quarantine situation, maybe your lack of generosity is an unwanted house guest. I encourage you to take out the spiritual raid, spray yourself real good with it, spiritually that is, and make sure you get rid of any of those unwanted house guests. This is your golden opportunity to do that, and only invite in the good house guests that you know will be helpful to you, okay? Now listen, go out and be a blessing today to somebody. You may end up being the only one who is. Bless them on this hump day. And don't forget to also subscribe to my YouTube channel, Jeanne Sigler, JeanneSigler. Hit the subscribe button, hit that notification bell. I'll notify you every time another Take Two is posted. Have a blessed midweek, y'all, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.